Okay, another beautiful day, January. We're getting on towards, I believe today is the 22nd. We get some snow on the ground. Good logging. It was -1 Fahrenheit this morning. That's -18 for you Celsius guys. And today we're going to talk about getting trees over when the tree just don't want to go. Now, I know every one of you, if you've ever taken a chainsaw to the woods, you've got your saw stuck in a tree at one time or another. It happens. Wind comes against the tree, pushes it back. Tree's leaning a little bit more. It's got more limbs on one side or the other, and you want to get it down in a particular place, and the tree just don't go. Well, that happens to the best of us. So today we're going to talk about the different things that was used, especially focusing on what the old guys did years ago when they were trying to get trees over. A few years back, I was on fire duty in the office of a large industrial sawmill operation, woodsland operation, and there was a camera hanging on the wall or a calendar, not camera, calendar hanging on the wall that had a picture of them doing different operations in the woods back in the 1940s or so. There wasn't any chainsaws in evidence in the picture. And one of the things they had was an arrangement of poles braced up against a tree. And some of the young guys said, "What's that?" I said, "That's a Sampson pole." Not too many people have ever heard of a Sampson pole, but today we're going to show you what a Sampson pole does. Now, the first thing to do about getting trees down, of course, when logging started, it started with these crosscut saws. You had the axe for making the undercut, and you had the crosscut saw, man on each end pulling on these all day long. There was a reason they were called misery whips. So if you were getting a tree down with these saws, the wedges like we use today would have been useless, because when you look at the kerf of the saw, it's only that wide through, about 1/8 of an inch. If you look at the size of these wedges, they wouldn't have been much good. So what the old timers used was this style of wedge right here. Very thin kerf. These are a couple that belonged to my grandfather, probably great-grandfather. They've been on the farm as long as I can remember. Now, these wedges were blacksmith made. You can see it's got a hand-chiseled line out the center here, hand-chiseled out here. If you look at the side of these, this one isn't as evident, but these were made sandwiched. And the reason I say sandwiched, you can see it more on this one. You have 2 layers of soft steel on the outside with a hardened steel bit on the inside. And that's the way that axes are made. Axes have the center of the axe is a hardened steel insert, while the outside, the cheeks of the axe, are soft steel. The soft steel can be shaped, and it's not brittle like the hardened steel would be. If these wedges had been made solely from hardened steel, when you hit them with an axe, they'd have a tendency to shatter. They could be tempered some, but there was always that risk of them shattering. That's why when axes are made, axes have a hardened steel bit, and the majority of the head of the axe is soft steel. So you can see this is broomed back a little bit, and you can see where it was made. There was probably a hole in here through the hardened part of the center of the axe, probably a hole to put a string or a wire for hanging it up. And it was manufactured that way. That wasn't done after the fact. But of course, this is broomed back a little bit. That's the thing about the soft steel. The soft steel would broom instead of shattering. So these two wedges here, designed. Now my father, who used crosscut saws in the woods, said this was a buck saw wedge, and this was a crosscut. There is a little difference in the kerf of them. You can see the buck saw one is a little bit bigger, and it would have been used for smaller wood. But the crosscut one goes down to a fairly fine point. So that's what they used in the days of the crosscut and the buck saws for getting trees down. Now, problem with these, if you hit these with a chainsaw, you're going to ruin the teeth on your chainsaw, ruin your chain. And so the next thing that came on the line, and I looked all through my shop today, I was sure I had some, there was aluminum wedges. And the aluminum wedges were made about this size here. Usually had a red painted head, an aluminum body. The aluminum wedges were softer than the steel wedges, and so the aluminum wedge, if you hit it with your saw when you were cutting in, if you had your wedges in and your saw happened to kick back in the stump, and they hit the aluminum wedge, it would eat the edges off, pretty much the same as what's happened to this plastic one here. The aluminum ones showed up about the 1950s, back in the days of the old McCulloughs and Home Lights, the big heavy old saws, and the aluminum wedges had the same taper to them that these plastic ones have. Then the plastic ones come along. I remember these in the latter part of the 1970s, where we're getting into these plastic ones. The plastic one, as you can see, has a kerf that's a lot more suited to a chainsaw chain, which is, you're getting close to 3/8 of an inch across. This is a smaller size chain. The 361 044 551 that we use has a bigger chain than this again. But these wedges are more suited for the bigger kerf of a chainsaw. These would be pretty much useless in the wintertime with a thin kerf saw like a crosscut. Now, one of the problems of these in the wintertime, like today, like I say, it was -1 this morning. You hit these the wrong way in the wintertime, they shatter, they fly off, or they'll just fly back out of the cut. So something that here's one here that did just that the other day. Hit it just the wrong way with the axe, and it's cold, and that's what happens to the wedge. Something that I used to do years ago when I was working in the woods by myself. I worked by myself for quite a few years in the woods, cutting big lumber. And what I would do is I would go in the morning and I'd pick out the first 10 or 12 trees that I was going to cut. And I would go look the trees over, figure which way they were going to fall, where I wanted them to lay. And then I would take some twigs and birch bark and a few dry limbs. I'd build a fire against the back of the tree. Because these stumps, you can kind of see it in this one here. Even though this is a frozen one, you can see the layer of ice that's frozen in on this stump. These trees will freeze in 2, 3, sometimes 4 inches in the wintertime. A layer of ice around the outside. Well, when you get that layer of ice and you got plastic wedges, the plastic wedges, as soon as you hit them, they're 30 feet down through the woods. They're no good at all in frozen wood. So what I do is just build a small fire again in the back of the trees, the first 10 or 12 trees I was going to cut, get that fire going to draw the frost and melt the wood on the back of the tree. Then you could get a wedge to start and go. The aluminum wedges, they had an advantage. You could actually put the aluminum wedge into a fire. If you had a fire for boiling your tea or whatever in the woods, you could stick your aluminum wedges in the fire for a couple of minutes and grab them out with your leather gloves or leather mittens, and the aluminum wedges would stick in the frozen wood better than the plastic. So then the next thing that you used to see the old guys do, besides the wedging bit, was a push pole. Now, maybe some of you have used a push pole before. Maybe you haven't. If you're new to the woods, you probably haven't. A push pole is just a simple, small diameter pole taken off to a point on the end and just cut flush on the bottom. And what the push pole is used for, you'd put a notch in the tree or come up against a good limb, get against the tree, and then you're using mechanical advantage. You're getting a higher point than what you could push, like if you were just standing pushing on the tree by hand. This gives you more of a mechanical advantage by getting higher up on the center of balance, so you could push against the tree and get the tree to go over while somebody else is cutting it, or if the tree happened to set back on your saw. And like anything, it comes with its risks. I've got a brother-in-law that's kind of an ultimate woodsman. He's been in the woods all his life. He's over 60 years old now. Been in the woods working all his life. He cuts hundreds of cords of firewood, studwood, saw logs every year. When he was a boy, he was using a push pole, helping his father, and put the push pole up against a big popple tree. Of course, your hand sits back here while you're pushing on the pole. The wind caught the popple tree. It sat back, push pole went against a fir tree. And he had a pair of gloves on, but the force of that big popple setting back against the tree, he lost his third finger at that knuckle. So it's just one of those things that can happen. Unfortunately, woods work is not safe work. It's a high risk industry and you have to keep your eyes open all the time, but no matter how much you watch, how careful you are, that kind of thing can happen. So we're going to cut a couple of trees here. The first one we're going to cut, we're going to demonstrate using the push pole, and then we're going to go to a Sampson pole, and we're going to show you how that was used. Okay, Benjamin, lay that one down. Daniel's going to take the push pole and give it a push back the road. This one doesn't have a real bad lean to it. We just want to more or less show you what the push pole will do. So, just like that. Not much chance for the tree to set back on the saw. That one had a rotten butt in it anyway. But a push pole just gets you higher up on the center of balance so that it's not going to set back on the saw, or if it does set back on the saw, you can push it loose, get the tree down. So now we're going to go up through the woods here. We've got another fir right here, and that guy is setting hard up through. But we're going to make him come down over in here, and we're going to do it without wedges. This is what they call a Sampson pole. Now, the old guys used this back in the days of the crosscut. It took 2 men to work one because to set it together, it is awkward as all get out to try and do this by yourself. I've tried, and you pretty much can't do this by yourself. So, boys, if you'd lift that first pole down here. This pole has 2 different cuts on the end. So on this end, what they done was they just took a taper off, they took the bottom off the pole, and they cut it square on the end. Now you can see in preparation, we put a notch up there with the chainsaw for that to set in. The old timers would have done that with an axe. The other end of the pole, a little bit of snow on it there. The other end of the pole is just cut in a wedge shape like this. Now this second pole, laying on the ground, goes into the stump of the tree, and it comes out and it's just got a notch in it for this pole to set in. So the pole sets in there. Lift it up, Daniel. That goes up and locks into that notch there. Now the advantage of this, when you're using just a push pole like Daniel just used out there on the road, a simple push pole, all of your force has got to come from your arms and your shoulders and your upper back. But with this, you get underneath the end of the Sampson pole, and you can use the force of your legs and your lower back and your hips. So you get a lot more mechanical advantage. Some of them old guys understood the Archimedes principle of the lever, because there's a lever in action that's going to double or triple. I don't know what the mechanical factor would be, but it'll at least double or triple the force that you could put on that with just a push pole. Okay, Benjamin, do your thing. He's got a undercut already made in that. Okay, you're good. You're good. Now the 2 of you get on the pole. And the leverage should bring her right up. And just like that, they're lifting that entire fir tree up and over. Now that tree had, I should have filmed up the side of the tree, that tree had quite a lean back through, into this woods here. But through the simple process of leverage, mechanical advantage, they were able to lift that tree up, bring it past dead center, tip it over, and lay it down. So that's a Sampson pole. A very simple setup. 2 poles cut to set in a notch. The old guys working in the woods when they were working along, and this pole, just give a quick measurement on that, Benjamin. What is that? That bottom pole must be 12 feet. The old guys would make a set of these Sampson poles and then kind of carry them along with them. So yeah, that's just over 12 feet. And the other one here is what, about 8 feet? 4, 8. So yeah, 12 and 8. The old guys would build the set of Sampson poles and just kind of carry them along with them from trail to trail as they cut. If they get tired of carrying them along, it's a quick and easy job to make a new set with saw and an axe. Chop them out, and so there's an explanation I've used in basic high school physics. You know, the old guys may not have been real well educated, but they sure understood how to move heavy materials with basic elements of physics: the block and tackle, the pulley, the pry bar, lever. They understood physics, whether they ever studied it or not. But okay, there's another one. And here's my crew. They look so enthused. I think they're getting cold. All right, let's get some more trees cut. Thank you.